welcome back to my channel. Today is a case like nothing I've ever seen before. Hold on, my dog really wants out. Oh my goodness, but she's gonna cry to come back in. And she's back in already. Today's case is very different than anything I've watched or, done anything about before. It's pretty crazy and you guys will definitely see why. So I don't want to have some big long intro. Let's go ahead and get into it. Today's case is about Charles and Jennifer Chia, and they were 8 and 6 years old, the brother being the eldest. They went to Anderson Elementary School in Reno, Nevada, and to this day there is currently a memorial there for them. The Anderson Elementary principal, Vince Ames, described the pair as best friends. She considered her brother her hero, and they frequently played together. Jennifer was shy and loved to draw and play the piano and violin. Her brother studied Taekwondo and played the violin. The siblings had also already picked out their Halloween costumes and they were both going as Batman. So Charles and Jennifer disappeared on October 18th in 1989. They were last seen exiting their school bus and walking the 100 yards to their apartment complex, which was the Timber Hills in southwest Reno, where their grandmother was waiting for them. Now, their parents were divorced for about 2 years prior to this, and the father lived in California, and so the mother and the grandmother were the ones raising them here in Reno. It was about 3:20 p.m. the last time they were seen, and like I said, they were just crossing the street and on their way home. And from getting off the bus and home, somebody saw the opportunity and they were taken. On July 25th, 1990, the skeletal remains of Charles and Jennifer were found in a shallow grave next to Highway 70 in Plumas County, California, by a construction worker. Plumas County is about 50 miles away from Reno, Nevada, and probably closer to 60 from South Reno. At the time of their disappearance, Charles had black hair, was wearing a long sleeve white shirt, a blue pullover, blue jeans, and was carrying a dark blue and red backpack. Jennifer Chia was 6 years old and had black hair, was wearing a white dress with black polka dots, white socks, light green shoes, and was carrying a blue tote bag and a Miss Piggy lunch pail. At first, the police didn't list them as missing persons when their grandmother called because everyone just kind of figured that they had strayed away from home or something, and it wouldn't be hard to find them. They maybe walked to a park or something on their own. They were just like, oh, it's gonna be a quick find, but obviously they never found them, and so it quickly turned into the most extensive search that has ever taken place in Washoe County. The children's pictures were placed on billboards, flyers, buttons, and they even aired a television reenactment of what they thought had happened. Now, so the police were very involved, the community was very involved, these children were everywhere. Their pictures were you definitely knew who they were if you were alive at this time. Over the years, the tips have flooded in, and almost every year the police department asks for help on this case, and every year a couple more tips come in. One of the tips that always stuck out to police was one that someone saw a brown van back into the turnout of the highway where the children were found. The van was observed about the same time the law enforcement believes they would have been buried or died. The only identifying information provided on the van was that it had a Miller gear shift knob, and I think that that's really weird to give as a description when you're calling in this van, because how would you know that? It's inside the vehicle, so just that doesn't make sense that you would know that unless you were in the vehicle yourself or had been in the vehicle yourself, so that's kind of sketchy. Over the years there's been the police trying to connect certain people to the case of these missing kids, and one of those people was Phillip Garrido. He was responsible for the abduction and assault of J.C. Lee Dugard, who was missing from South Lake Tahoe for 18 years and had recently turned up. And so they were trying to see if he was linked to it, because it seemed to be a very similar case. She was taken like from her driveway pretty much. She was walking to her bus stop and was taken. Her father saw it happen. It was just very similar circumstances, but he ended up being cleared of the charges. Then on the 10th anniversary, there was a tip to the Reno police that was a pretty big key and was really weird. So witnesses in 2000 reported they saw a white Volkswagen near the gravesite about the time of the abduction. The car was registered to convicted felon James W. Grooms, who had been spending the last 9 years in prison. And he was in prison for something related to the children. On the 22nd and 24th, just 4 and 6 days after the children went missing, he was calling the restaurant that their mother owned in town and pretty much, telling her that for $100,000 he would return her children. And he was just like, this poor mother is already so heartbroken because her kids are missing and they're little kids. And then you have this man calling who obviously knows who she is, already knows about the case, and the flyers and everything like that, the billboards, they didn't go up till November 5th. So this is before all of that this man knew that these kids were missing. And he could have seen it on the news or in a newspaper or something, but I just think that's so weird. And he knew that their mother owned the restaurant, and he ended up going to prison for that, like I said, for 9 years. And he was released in 1998 from the Nevada prison. He is still a suspect in the case too. He has never released where he was on those days, and his car has actually never been found, and they think that that vehicle would have such key evidence to the case, like DNA and maybe items of the children's. No items have ever been found. They weren't found buried with them. And they've just never found the car. And so, maybe dumped it in a river, in a lake. Lake Tahoe's very nearby. It's huge, but you would think someone would see something like that, but you never know. And there's an endless amount of lakes, endless amount of mountains and things like that here. So if you see a white Volkswagen somewhere, report it, definitely, if it's just not supposed to be there. Obviously, it's just, there's so many cars here that are out in the mountains and stuff and are really old and just rolled off cliffs and beat ups. If you see those kind of cars and it's a white Volkswagen, probably call that in, because that could be linked to this crime. Also, over the years, multiple people, dozens of people, have confessed to this case, saying that they're the ones who murdered them. But that happens so often with high profile cases that it's can be really hard for the police to weed out those people, because it's almost like these people just want to get their name in the spotlight even if they didn't actually do it. And I think that's kind of a weird obsession to have, but people do it, and none of these people were ever saw as linked or even possible suspects. There ended up being a $50,000 reward for information, and still that didn't get any real reliable tips forward, which is just crazy. And the bodies, since they were so decomposed and just skeletons, they had no way to tell really how they died. They were, just skeletons. And so it's just who knows when they died or how they died or anything like that. Were they tortured, sexually assaulted? Nobody knows what this person did to them. Was it James Grooms? Was it Phillip Garrido? Garrido was cleared, but he still was linked to very similar cases in the area. So who would say that he didn't do this? But there's other people that the police are also looking for. So if you have any information on these following people, please call and give it to them. They're looking for the couple who reported the brown van with the Miller Lite gear shift knob near the burial site, because again, how would you know it had that unless you were in the car? They're also looking for a balding Asian man at the apartment complex at the time of the kidnapping. He was standing next to the pickup parked near the bus stop, and he was never found. And then shortly after the children's funeral in 1990, a man deposited money to the children's trust fund and was crying and just super emotional on like the footage from like the bank. The teller turned on the surveillance cameras and gave the footage to the police, and he has not yet been found. I think it's really weird to put money into a trust fund after a funeral of a kid too. Like, that just seems really weird. Not that I necessarily think that that man was suspicious, but it almost seems like a denial stage there. And, you know, I'm sure it was shown to like the family and stuff, and if they didn't even know who he was, like, that's just kind of weird. But I think it's so crazy that like you could find their bodies like 8 months after they were taken and they were already like decomposed to skeletons. Like, that just seems so fast for that to happen. I don't know. I think that it's just totally insane to have the bodies, for them to disappear in such a short walk from their home, and, you know, such an extensive search. I don't think that the police had any negligence here, anything. It seems like they were really trying to do their job. The entire community has been trying to do their job for it. And I think it's just one of those cases that it's kind of old now and nobody knows about it, nobody talks about it, and people still know something. It's, you know, somebody out there knows something, suspicious of something, has, you know, seen the white Volkswagen somewhere, I'm sure, or it was sold or something. Like, I just don't believe that that kind of stuff disappears. I believe that people just decide not to come forward for some reason. I really do hope that this case is solved one day. I really think it's just going to take one tip that's going to lead them down the hole of everything they need to know, and I do believe it really starts with where is that vehicle at, and I think that finding that is just going to lead to so many answers, and, you know, answers to questions we didn't even know we had. Who do you think is responsible? Do you think it's grooms? Do you think it's the couple that had the brown van? Do you think it's the man that was at their bus stop? Was it the guy who deposited money into their trust fund? Like, who do you think is responsible? I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you guys like and subscribe down below, and have a good day.